Hi everybody, it is a lovely cool evening. We had some rain this afternoon here on Village Earth, and now I wanted to take you on a tour of the outside of our house as I sort of turn the camera here. And one thing I'd like you to notice is how rustic all the walls are. This is one of the great things about this particular house. You might like white paint, but there is a rustic look. Once again, on the mezzanine at Orchid Street in Quezon City, Philippines. And we could just as well call this the first in a series of episodes on real estate, because I'm going to focus today on some of the ins and outs of renting a house in Metro Manila, or pretty much anywhere in the Philippines. And of course, the things that I point out to you today can also be applied to just about any country in the world. So let's begin. Now, the place where I'm sitting, the mezzanine, is actually the number one best thing about this house. It is the quickest selling point that you could possibly find in a house. And the thing is, all the houses in this whole subdivision have the same feature: an overhanging balcony looking out toward a large cathedral-style window. I don't think we'll ever live in another place like this again, but I hope we do, because it is a beautiful architectural feature. So coming in at first on our list of pros for this property, the mezzanine. You can tell from the videos how the mezzanine rises from the first floor. First we look down to the first floor. It's almost like being a preacher in a pulpit or a choir stand in a big church. And then looking up from downstairs. And let's take a look at the mezzanine from outside. See the large cathedral window in front. Now, when we were looking for our house to rent here in the Philippines, most of the homes that we looked at were of a very particular Filipino style. It's called bahay na bato. Bato means stone, and it is a Spanish modification of the traditional bahay kubo. A kubo meaning a hut. And when you go through the Philippines in the countryside and you see these grass, thatch roofed, or bamboo houses, those are your bahay kubo, also known as a nipa hut. But the bahay na bato features high roofs. And that's what we have here in this house. We have a very high ceiling that rises to the apex of the roof, creating very high ceilings throughout the entire house with sharp angles. If you look right behind me in this video, you can see the ceiling in the corners back here and how it comes together into an apex just over my head. That is a high ceiling that is typical of most traditional Filipino homes, both the bahay na bato from Spain and the bahay kubo, the traditional Philippine house. So with that background out of the way, let's take a look at some of the other features. Houses like this, as you can imagine, get a lot of natural light. We have light coming in on one side in the morning and a lot of light throughout the afternoon and into the evening coming on this side of the house just behind me. So natural light is the second great feature for this house. And the third feature for this house, the third pro, the size of the living room. This house features a great living room. It extends all the way from the front toward the back. And the living room has a bit of a history behind it, actually. At one time, there was no kitchen on the back of the house. The kitchen was on the back of the living room. And the door that you see here going out the back of the living room was at one time the back door for the house, leading onto a yard or a patio behind. Well, at one point, the owners of this house, probably back in the 1980s at some time, shortly after it was built perhaps, decided that they wanted more space in the living room, and they wanted a more spacious kitchen and dining area. So they decided to alter the structure of the house, and they built a kitchen. Now, this kitchen was a pretty good idea, but it does have some structural flaws that we're going to take a look at, adding that rustic feel. The first major problem that we'll highlight is coming up as I approach the kitchen toward the back corner just above the sink. Wait for it, you'll see it very soon. And there it is. Do you see it? It's that huge gaping hole in the ceiling. Now, when we first saw this, we were quite shocked by it. It didn't occur to us at first all the problems that it would cause, but my wife specifically asked the landlord to please close that hole, and so they're going to do so. Now, there's a good reason for this hole to be here. It was to be the entry and exit for a new staircase. The new staircase was to go out onto a patio on the roof of the kitchen. Well, those plans fell through, either because they ran out of money or because they found the construction in the end to be too hard. You would, after all, have to change the position of that kitchen sink and counter. So it left us, though, with some structural problems. We have a lot of water running down through that hole. It has left some cracks even along the wall below it. We also have, of course, the potential for insects to enter. Insects, rats, mice, lizards, you name it. They're all going to come through that hole. So it is absolutely essential that we close it. Now, the hole isn't completely open to the sky. They actually have put a structure above the hole to hopefully keep rain out. But it isn't doing very much to keep the vermin out, I'll tell you that. But that is structural problem number one with this house. Now, apart from that gaping hole in the kitchen ceiling, this abandoned construction project did leave some other problems as well. And the second big structural problem that results from it is that there is a crack on the back wall just behind the dining area. This crack is actually causing some seepage under the paint, water coming in, forming a pocket underneath the freshly laid coat of paint on the wall. It's pretty easy to see how this crack would form. You have the back wall of this house being built right up against the back wall of the house behind, with just millimeters of space between the two constructions. So water is seeping down between these two walls, the wall of the house in front, our house, and the wall of the house behind. It's getting in there, and they have not put any sealant whatsoever to keep water out. So this is a common problem in Philippine houses. As you're going through and you're looking for different structural deficiencies, this is one of the ones that you'll encounter quite a bit. My wife also says they have a similar problem in their house in Samar, which is newly constructed, and they're trying to deal with it. But apart from these two structural deficiencies in the kitchen, centered around that abandoned construction project, most of the other flaws in this house are really just aesthetic, not really safety issues. Let's take a look at some of those. In the dining area of that new kitchen, we have a portico. Now, this was at one time the back window of the house, just above what used to be the kitchen sink, which had been in the back of the living room before the expansion. Now, this portico actually has a lot of potential. It could be made to look great, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to remove those wooden shelves, which are actually just papered over with brown wooden-looking wallpaper. We're going to put in some new white wallpaper, and this is on the dining room side of the portico. On the living room side of the portico, which you could see behind the sofa that we now have installed, we're going to hang a painting. We're not sure what it'll be, but hopefully it'll be something very Filipino, perhaps with a little bit of flowers or fruit involved. So that's what we're trying to do with this portico, to make it much more attractive than it is now. Oh, and by the way, what are we going to install in that portico? Well, we've ordered a set of hanging wine glass racks, and we're going to put that hanging wine glass rack in this portico. And on the top shelf, we're going to put some bottles of wine or some Philippine brandy. This will make a great place to entertain guests and talk about all of the intricacies of this beautiful rustic house. Now, we do have some other aesthetic problems with the house as well. Some of them are kind of funny, like this dangling bathroom doorknob base. And one thing I've noticed quite a few times in the Philippines is how hard it is to get and hang on to toilet seats. The one in the downstairs bathroom is missing completely, while the one in the upstairs bathroom is loose but still attached for now. Oh, and if you've ever wondered how we get hot water in our bathrooms here, well, we have a local water heater installed at each point where we want it. This, I understand, was introduced to the Philippines from Japan. So overall, our house here in the Philippines, Quezon City, on Orchid Street, really is a rewarding place to live. It needs some work, but it also has a lot of beauty. I love the design with that mezzanine and the big cathedral window that you see behind me. I also like the living room. We're looking forward to getting a television in there as soon as lockdown is over. So there you go. Lots of things to see and do in this beautiful house. Come and visit us sometime on Orchid Street in Quezon City. Look for us near SM Fairview. Drop by, we'll have a little Philippine brandy and talk about how rustic these Philippine houses are. See you next time. I'm John Grimmett, a man from Village Earth.